if I said one word, what would come to my mind? If I said marriage, what would you think?
Princess Bride.
Princess Bride. Okay, you wouldn't think of Juliana Paper, would you? Why not? Okay, and that would be the thing. That'd give you away right there, wouldn't it? And you would think, who was the big guy on that movie?
Andre the Giant.
Andre the Giant, yes. I've got Andre on the wall up there. You see those blue marks up there?
Yeah.
Andre's up there. You just can't read it from where you are. Maybe you can read it. I can't.
I cannot.
Okay, that's good. Anyway, Andre's on the wall there. I've got Shaq on the wall up there too. You know who Shaquille O'Neal is? That's a big man.
Yes.
Yeah, 325 pounds, and he doesn't look like me. He's just big. We're talking about Goliath this morning, and I wanted to give a comparison so you know. Now you're thinking, which one's who, whatever. Well, I'll go ahead and spill the beans. There's Goliath up there. There is Andre the Giant. According to his passports, he varied between 7 and 7'4". There's Shaquille. They just found out he's not really 7'1". He said he's actually 6'11", but he played like he was 7'1". That was his words, not mine. And these other two will stay for a minute here, but that gives you an idea right there. I don't know if I'd stand in the way. There's Goliath way up there. He was 9'9" according to 6 cubits and a span. So you know, well, okay, so let's put it in perspective. It's said that historically, Israelite men were about 5'6" to 5'8". So you know who that is right there? That's David, right there. And Saul was a head and shoulders above everybody in Israel. And I just measured Leo. It's about 11 to 12 inches from his shoulder, top of his head. So there's King Saul, the big guy, biggest man in Israel, right there. So there you got an idea of who we're looking at, and we actually have people today. There was one man, I think, in the 1940s. His name was Robert.
Yeah, from New York.
Laidlaw or something like that. I remember now. He was 8'11", and he died real quick. They're just big. I hate to say it. I don't mean to demean people, but big people, big men, big, tall. They're just like big dogs. They don't live long. I mean, I'm not trying to be ugly, but Leo's got a little collie that probably lived to be 15. We've got a bigger dog that if she makes another year, she's lucky. She'll be 12. She's 12 now. Big dogs don't live, and big people don't live. You're just not set up to, your heart's not set up to pump blood 8 foot up. Your back's not set up to handle the stress of 350 pounds stretched over 8, 9 foot. So it's just, Goliath was going to be short-lived anyway. I just believe in my estimate, what I've read, the research, he was not going to be an 80-year-old man. Just never going to happen. So David did him a favor, probably. So anyway, if you look in Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 17, we read the story about David and Goliath. And I just wanted to give you a perspective. You know, you say, oh, he's 9 foot tall. Well, I'm going to put it over here, but I don't have but 8 foot or more. It's not tall enough. And he had to duck his head to walk under this right here. And you get an idea of where are you looking at, David? I'm looking at a man that's 4 foot, 5 foot taller than I am. I'm looking at his belt buckle. Yes.
Say another famous NBA player, 7'7", Manute Bol. He came in from Africa or something like that. Anyways, he died at 47
Yep.
with kidney failure and heart problems. And I was going to point out, Great Danes live on an average of 8 to 8.
Yep, they just don't live that
But-
long. It's too much stress on your body.
But he was a giant. I don't know. He was a giant, kind of I don't think they have those kind of people anymore, obviously. We don't have any 9'9" people, but he must have had some kind of syndrome or something.
Well, Andre had that syndrome.
Mars.
It was a growth syndrome.
Marfan.
And said, you continue growing. Yeah, they showed him holding a beer can, but it could have been a Coke can, the average size, and it was like a little bitty thing in this man's hand. He would just, and Goliath is that much bigger than Andre. Andre is the second one down. This guy would be looking like a little tiny man upside Goliath. They said he would probably be between 380 to 500 pounds big. And I don't think there was too many fat warriors in that day. They didn't live long. If you can't get out of the way, you got to be able to move and physically fit. So this man was a giant man. 380 pounds to 500 pounds. We don't know exactly. But that just gives you an idea of what the Israelites are looking at across that valley. They all get in their armor, and they all line up, and they start yelling and cheering and screaming, and Goliath walks out. I'll take one of y'all. You beat me, we're your slaves. I beat you, you're our slaves. I'm not going out there. I can't even. No. It's like his head's in the clouds. But David did. Okay. Yes, his challenge every day, and I made a note of this, it just struck me odd. For 40 days, Goliath comes out there, day, in the morning, and the night. Let's do it. Come on, bring somebody out here for 40 days straight. What else happened 40 days straight? What?
Rain.
It rained 40 days, night and day, for 40 days and nights. The flood. What else happened for 40 days?
Jesus was in the wilderness?
Jesus in the wilderness, exactly. 40 days. It seems to be, I thought about this morning, 5 o'clock I woke up. I guess this thing's on in my head running around, Leo knows what I'm talking about. And I'm thinking, how can that be a coincidence? 40 days of rain and night, 40 days of challenging the Israelites with Goliath, 40 days, and I wrote here, it's just like Goliath was 40 days of taunting Israel. Noah, 40 days of rain. That's a judgment coming up right there. It's just right around the corner. There's a judgment coming. Jesus, 40 days of temptation. After he's in the wilderness, he's coming up 40 days in temptation. How can that be a coincidence? To me, that shows a little bit of God's working. How does this just happen? 40 days, 40 days, 40 days. It's like that's one of God's favorite numbers, I think. But it's just, how can that just be coincidence? I don't think it is. I think God's behind it. He makes it happen. So yeah, that was the 40 days. He's out there yelling at them. Now, we brought in a piece of wood, the first lesson about with Sisera, that the lady pinned him down to the dirt with a stake, and the stake was about this long. That's about the size, the big end of that stake I brought in, it was about the size of his spear. Now I've got a sledgehammer on that weighs 16 pounds. And that thing's a handful. It's a lot better than a 20-pounder. I've used that a little bit. But that's how heavy the end of his spear, the head of the blade was 16 pounds that what weighed. And they said it would probably been, if David is 5'8", his spear probably would have been 7 foot tall, maybe somewhere in there. Right? Just about the same height as he was, 6 to 7 foot. Goliath's spear probably would have been 10 foot long. You're not getting close to me. No, I got you out there 10 foot, but he's holding a 16-pound spearhead on the end of a 10-foot stick, and the stick is 2 inches around. That piece we brought in for the stake, that's almost the size of his spear. They said average about 2 inches in diameter. That's huge. They said, I don't know how big the sword was. That's what David cut his head off with. Kind of irony there. Yeah, David didn't have a sword. All he had was a sling 5 rocks, his rod, his staff. And we did research last year. We had a lesson on slingshots. They used not a sling like we think of today, but it was a sling. And they actually had a sling that used the rod. And that added to it. You take a sling on the end of a rod and it multiplied it even more. And he shows up with a staff. Could have been the shepherd's staff. It could have been the staff he used for slinging. Okay? Because that makes, when you read the 23rd Psalms, that changes everything when he says, my rod and my staff comfort me. He named 2 things. David shows up with a sling and a staff. It could have been the staff that slings. Okay? But anyway, 5 stones. He tells you, how many did he need?
1.
Yeah. I always thought, why did he pick up 5? He thinks he's a bad angle to drop 1. I'm thinking all kinds of things. One of the commentators said, Goliath had 4 brothers. Think about that. I'm ready. I'll get all of y'all. Just come on, bring it on. He had, I think it was 4 brothers, or 3 or 4 brothers. So that made a lot more sense. Why would I pick up 5 stones? If God's with me, I only need 1.
I'm a little late because it took me a while I knew there was some other things, but you talked about Jesus fasted in the wilderness 40 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here's some other things. Moses was on Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40
I didn't
nights.
catch that one.
From Jesus' resurrection to his ascension into heaven was exactly 40 days. And Jonah's warning of the prophets, Jonah the prophet's warning of Nineveh, he gave them 40 days to repent. So it seems that this 40 days is a transition, a period of testing, trial, preparation, or whatever that leads to spiritual growth or a new beginning. So there's a lot of 40 days.
Yes.
I picked up 7.
So I only scratched the surface when I got those 3.
The spying of Canaan was 40 days.
The what?
The spying
Oh, yeah.
of
That's right. I
Canaan
forgot
was
that
40
one.
days, and Elijah went 40 days with 1 meal when he was on Mount Horeb.
Okay.
So I'm getting more to,
What Leo just brought up is the 40 days, something's going to change. Something's going to change. God's fixing to make a change. And this is Goliath, 40 days, God made a change after that. So God's in control. I always thought to myself, why did David pick up 5 stones? But the commentator, he said, well, Goliath had brothers, and they were probably all big brothers too. So it is historically because of the Jewish, we call it Midrash, is what we call it, that we just studied Ruth, and her sister-in-law was Orpah, and they claim that Orpah was Goliath's mom. I don't know. That's all the commentary, the way the Jewish rabbis, they make something really blossom, put it that way. Nice way of putting it. And I don't know, you can't prove that from the Bible, because Orpah went back to Moab and we never see her again, never hear from her again, but it is, yes. So that's what they say. So yes, it was, you find the other brothers in 2 Samuel, when other people, apparently his other brothers weren't as good as Goliath because the other men killed all his brothers. They slew somebody. The brothers were killed by other Jewish warriors. But what makes David different?
God.
God?
His
Okay.
belief
Faith in God,
yeah.
trust in God, and God was on his side.
Okay. And he wasn't a warrior. He wasn't even proven. He took care of animals.
I was going to say, his 5 stones, he fought off lions and bears. And it's the same thing as having a magazine. You don't bring a single shot if you're, you know what I'm
They
saying?
can read magazine.
No.
Okay.
Magazine, that's why they
You
have
don't walk in with a magazine. I'm sorry. Yeah. I used to do that to a dog. He'd bark at night, you get him, roll up a newspaper, and think it's killing him. Well, they got quiet. Sir?
Yeah, he's a boy.
And he's a boy. He's a teenager.
14, 15.
I didn't look it up. Somebody tell me, what does it mean when they say he's ruddy in appearance?
he's outside all the time, he's
Oh, that
tan.
cocky teenager.
He's tan.
Put this on so
out there
long to
taking care of the
better.
animals.
Thank you.
You should do like that. I think
Pimples.
reason.
Well, and he wasn't old enough to be
Well,
in the army and stuff. He was still at home
No.
and basically a servant boy taking him food and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, too small for, armor and all of that. So, we're not told how old he is, but we're thinking probably about 14, 15, 16 years old.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah,
His three oldest brothers are in the army there.
right.
He's the 8th in line. He's the youngest. So, don't know what his brother's age are, but they're military age. And he shows up, and it says he was ruddy. He was handsome, but he was also ruddy. I don't know. I didn't look that word up. What does that mean?
Kind of redheaded.
Redheaded?
Yeah.
When you
Okay.
Google it, it says healthy reddish or pinkish glow on the skin, often described as a rosy, fresh, or flushed appearance. Could be received as healthy, vibrant, or glowing look, or just being out in the fresh air and cold, or having working really hard.
Okay. I should have looked that up, but I didn't. But apparently there's something about him. He's not grown. He's not, you think you're grown up when you're just 18, right? But 5 or 6 years later, now you're back in the real world, as I used to tell my son. When you get out of school, you're gonna get in the real world, and you find out what living is about, and it will change you. And David is not there yet. He's still at home looking after sheep. His dad tells him to take this stuff and take to and from what I understand, it was about 12 miles. The battle line is about 12 miles from where home is. That's not very far. But I guess if you got to walk everywhere, it's a long distance. But take this food, go see how your brothers are doing. His dad is worried about his 3 oldest sons. They're in the military. They're at a war, in a war.
and that might tell us something about the situation about military back then. They were on this area, high ground, and here's David bringing food to his brothers. That tells me that very likely families took care. Here they have 40 days. That's a lot of logistics for a lot of reasons, but food and water would certainly be some. But there could be families all the time going and feeding their, if they needed it, they would go feed their own people in the battle area.
Yes, so he sends him to the battle line. And David gets there. What does he hear?
Goliath.
He hears Goliath. And he watches what's going on here. He's been out there doing it for, 39 days, maybe 40 days. This might be the 40th day. He's been doing this day and night for 40 days. And he hears him. He defies Israel. He defies their God. I'll just bring me somebody to fight. Your God is nobody. You're nothing. He didn't take that very kindly at all. He took it personally. He took it as if, you're not talking about my army, my Israelite army. You're talking about God's army. Now you're defying God. And that rubbed him the wrong way. He may be little. We already pointed out, David is at the bottom of this line here, and Goliath is up there at the top. But he may be small, but he's got a fire in him. He's a man after God's own heart.
And I looked up something that was occurring to me, did a little bit of research, you don't get a whole lot from it, but the fact that why, as big as Goliath was, why did he feel like he had to dress in all of that armor? He clearly had the upper hand, and I was just wondering, why David didn't feel the need. He put the armor on, and it wasn't what he needed or wanted to do, but Goliath felt like he had to just, the armor's weighing more than he is, so why is he doing that?
Okay, let me think about this. It used to be on Sunday afternoon, they had wrestling on TV every Sunday afternoon. And there used to be a preacher right here, and we quoted him several times that he watched that wrestling every Sunday. And I went over there several times When I was little, we'd play with Rob, and he was a couple of years younger than me. Spend the day over there with him, and we eat lunch. We were watching that wrestling. Yeah, wow, look at that. He ate that up. Why would a wrestler show up in a wrestling match with a hood over his head, with just, it's all about show. This is Goliath. You intimidate somebody, you got a spear that's 10 foot long and weighs 16 pounds. It's all about show. He was.
But as far as battle gear goes, in the military, they use flak jackets and all that stuff. It's protection, because even if he's Goliath and he's 9'9", they can be spears that penetrate him, there can be arrows. They had arrows, spears, and they also had those athlatls that you talk about that actually could throw about 50 yards. But I was going to point out something. On YouTube, there's a man that has been practicing with a sling for many years. He gives demonstrations. That guy at 25 yards, he can hit can after can after can. He's just that accurate. I didn't think you could be quite that accurate. But here's David. We always say, well, God kind of made the stone hit him properly, but David was probably a good shot, and he didn't have much to do out there with the sheep. So I imagine, like anything else, we all practice. If we like guns and stuff, I'm sure that he practiced often, because he had bears and lions. You can't hit them in the thigh and think they're going to stop. So.
No. And if I didn't look up the passage, I read it, but I didn't write down the passage. It states that the tribe of Benjamin had 700 slingers. That's the sling rock throwers. They could hit a hare and never miss. And they said 700. They were left-handed. I don't know if that makes a difference, but kind of like throwing a catch net. You don't know if you're left-handed or right-handed, but yes. That was stated in the Bible. They were counted. They were numbered with the military. 700 slingers that could sling a stone at a hare and not miss. I didn't write it down, but it's stated in the Bible. The Benjamites.
Well, just like Leo just said about you put on all the armor because somebody could throw a spear at you. Well, equally they could do that to David. The commentator was pointing out that no matter how big Goliath was, he still was a vulnerable person, and David had confidence. He wasn't vulnerable because he had God. So he was pointing out that David didn't need the gear because of the confidence and all that he had, and bravery that God gave him. But
David didn't need the gear because he hadn't proven it. He used it later on. He used a sword. He didn't use a sling anymore that we know of. When he became king, he had his stuff that he wore. But he hadn't proved that when he's a 14, 15, 16-year-old boy. I can't know how to use that stuff. I need to use what I know. This is what I've trained with. This is what God has shown me how to use. And this is what I know.
Plus it didn't fit.
But it didn't fit, yes. That was, you see the difference between David right here and Saul, head and shoulders above everybody. David might have been a little bit short. That was a full-grown, 5'6", 5'8", is full-grown man. David might not have been full-grown at that time. There's Saul. How is his armor going to fit?
Well, why would he want to put Goliath's armor in his tent? It was also talking about, because that's never going to fit David.
Surprise.
But it showed victory, God's victory.
Yeah. So why did he take his head off?
That's victory too.
There's things that they did we don't understand, but you can just generalize. Okay. So any more? Yes, sir.
I would just like to speak to the armor of Goliath. It's also not just as David got older, he had different degrees of being able to use, but a need for certain types of armor. When you're young, you're more agile.
Yep.
And you want to be agile. And so you'll use just one type of a shield or a shorter knife, whatever, because you're more agile. Goliath could not, by physics. We've never seen a man that's tall, certainly not that tall, but all the tall people we have witnessed are terrible at agility. Goliath needed the extra, because his was going to be blunt force. He was going to get close to you and crush you. If he didn't crush you with that spear, he was not going to be more agile than anyone. He had no agility. He had blunt force trauma. So he would wear a lot of armor because he could not get out of the way. And it proves, of course, David had God helping him, but still, the way to get him was agility, because he can't get out of the way of anything. So he's big and strong. He's thick, and then he wears thick armor because he might as well. He's not going to dodge anything. He needs to be able to take it and then counterpunch, whatever. So that's why he had so much, was because he had no choice but to suit up. He could not move fast.
Also, he's expecting another warrior, a soldier, to come out against him.
Right.
So that man may have armor. He'll have armor on too. So that would be another reason to suit up. You don't know who's coming out of that camp. I'm challenging the whole army of Israel. Somebody's coming out of there. Not this shepherd boy. I didn't expect that. But yes, he's not agile. He's big. He's I wouldn't say he's clumsy. But if he hits you with a 16-pound sword, a spear, you're going down. You're breaking arms, legs. Your whole body just going to blow up.
50 caliber.
I've seen what a 16-pound hammer will do to bolts and nuts and hammer wrenches. It's just amazing the energy that a 16-pound piece of steel will do. And that's on a 4-foot hammer. You put it on a 10-foot stick and give a 300, 500-pound man the ability to swing it, you're going to move. Maybe in 2 pieces, but you're going to move.
Right.
So yes, this is the man that he's walking out to challenge. Now, he gives God all the credit. That's amazing right there. I'm not going to do this. God's going to do it. He knows God is on his side. He understands that this is a Philistine, a heathen. This is a Gentile, people we're talking about. And he has insulted my God. He's insulted God's army. He will go down. God will see to it. And he may even think, I may not accomplish it, but I'll get him started. Sometimes that's all it takes is one person to get something started. He probably might even think, I may not finish this job, but once I start it, they'll be behind me. And that's basically what he did do. Okay, so David, in chapter 17 of 1 Samuel, he goes out to meet Goliath. And Saul, let's talk about Saul just a minute. If Saul, we got Saul marked right here, he's head and shoulders taller than anybody else in Israel. This is the king. And that's what it stated when they found him looking for his father's donkeys. They described him. He was the best looking man in the whole of Israel, and he was head and shoulders. I measured Leo. He's just about 12 inches from his shoulder to the top of his head. So that would put David at 5'6", 5'8". That puts Saul at about 6'6". That's a big man for that time. He's taller than anybody. Who would he expect to go out and meet? The biggest man in Israel should go out and meet the biggest man they've ever fought. That's what everybody's thinking. That's Saul's job. He's the king. He should go out. He's bigger than everybody. He should be the one to take care of this. And where's Saul? He's scared to death. Well, granted, Saul had been told by Samuel, the Lord has left you. You're going to be replaced. God has left you behind. He's torn it from you. So, Saul may know the truth. You've got to be really dumb if you don't want to admit the truth that God is no longer behind what you're doing. So why would you walk out there? Because God's not behind you. So that's the situation there that the Israelites were looking at. They're looking at Saul to take care of this problem. Because they wanted a king to go before us in battle. Well, here's your chance, Saul. Not happening.
With all the interactions Saul and David had, this is actually the first meeting that Saul had never seen David before, and this is the first time that he meets him.
Well, it doesn't say he doesn't know David. He wants to know whose son is this. He's asking who's David's father. I thought the same thing, but it didn't specify. He didn't ask, who's that kid there? They said, who's his father? And they say, his father's name is Jesse. You know, he knows what family. He's got recognition because he played his harp for Saul off and on back when Saul would have these, I don't know what you call it, a temper tantrum,
Oh, I thought that was after.
I don't know, but he has mood swings that are just, we won't go there. Ma'am?
Mood swings, today they call it bipolar.
Oh, he might have been bipolar or maybe more than that, yeah. So he was off and on. You never knew what. You know, he tried to kill his own son. He tried to kill David. But David played that harp and it calmed him down. So he's been around Saul. But Saul might not have known, apparently did not know who David's father was. And this would give, I don't know if Saul would have, he should have, I think it was required for them to write down the scriptures, to be able to remember the scriptures as a king. He should have known Judah, the tribe of Judah, the new leader. The leader will be from Judah. So he should have put those two together and realized, okay, he's from Jesse, and Jesse's from the tribe of Judah, and I guess that's bigger math than he wanted to do, but he couldn't put it all together, that David was the tribe of Judah, and he would be of the lineage of the kingship. So, sure.
I was going to say, I got mixed up. I thought he did that after, but obviously he did that before.
Did it before.
He was his harp, but he also was interesting enough, his armor bearer.
Okay, I didn't catch that one.
Yeah, as a harpist, and then he made him his armor bearer, which I guess is a step up or something. But
Yeah, when I was studying up for this lesson, I thought about Goliath's shield bearer. He's walking in front of Goliath like, you still there, you know? What do you think that guy felt when that rock stuck him in the head and he fell flat on his face? He's still holding that shield up, and I can't imagine what that shield bearer felt when the guy behind him, the giant, fell down. Oh boy, I gotta go. Time to leave. Now back up, back out of here, because this is not going good. He's the first man they're going to reach. He's ahead of Goliath, standing in front of Goliath. I've often thought about that man. He's just like, that's a bad job. What a bad day to be the shield bearer. So the Philistine, let's look in chapter 17 there. Let's see if David, 41, verse 41. Then the Philistine came on and approached David with the shield bearer in front of him that we just mentioned. When the Philistine looked and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy with a handsome appearance. The Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come out to me with sticks? The Philistine cursed David by his gods. Who was the Philistine gods? Dagon. Now let's back up a little bit, back up in history a little bit, or might have been, no, I guess it was in the future, when the Philistines captured the ark and they took it and put it in their temple with Dagon. What was Dagon's shape when he got up the next morning, when they went into the temple? He fell over on his face. Which way did Goliath fall when he hit him in the head? He fell on his face. Coincidence again? That's like 40 days. That's another coincidence, like, okay, wow. So anyway, he said, am I a dog? Now we're going to understand what he meant by am I a dog. It's not collie, it's not a shepherd. This was a way of describing homosexual prostitutes in their time. Yes. So that changed everything. Am I a dog? You come out, no. Am I a prostitute, a homosexual prostitute? And why do you come out here with a stick to me? Am I a dog? That's the way it changes everything about what he said to David. He's really insulted when he comes out there with his staff and a sling. He's really insulted. That's just not. First, as a kid, a little kid, and he's got a stick. And what am I, a dog? So it changes. That was one of the commentaries. It changes the conversation a whole lot when you realize what they meant when they called somebody a dog. You know, I've been called dog-faced before, but that's nothing new. Anyway, I call my dog that every now and then, but she doesn't care. The Philistine also said to David, "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the sky and the beasts of the field." He's got his confidence. He knows. He's got a little kid here, and he's like, "That's taller. I'm 4 foot taller than him. You can't even get to me. I got a 10-foot spear. You can't even touch me." Why wouldn't I be confident? Then David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have taunted." Yeah, yes. "This day the Lord will deliver you up into my hands, and I will strike you down and remove your head from you. And I will give the dead bodies of the army of the Philistines this day to the birds of the sky and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel." He could have stopped right there and it'd been fine. I think God would have taken care of it right from then on. But so he did. The Philistine starts to charge, starts to come at David, and David didn't run away. He ran to him. But that kind of messes up you. You know, if I've got a stick and I can poke Leo from here to there, but he moves forward and I got to back up, I can't poke you now. You're too close. He went to the man, and he got that sling. And just like Leo said, he's been out there shepherding those sheep. He's got a bunch of rocks and a sling and nothing all day long.
Yes.
I'm going to get good with this thing. He slung that thing, and of all places, hit him right in the forehead. It said it sunk in his forehead. Wham! And then he fell flat on his face.
When you listen to those things, how they do them, some of them can actually spin them, but that rock can get going very fast.
Very fast. You're not talking a thumb, you're talking about a chunk of rock. And he got it out of a brook, so it would have been smooth. Carrie?
Did Saul not sin for David
No.
in verse 31?
Well, I think he sent for him after he heard talk. David went to the battle line because his father sent him with food to his brothers. When he got there, he hears the Philistine, Goliath, making the challenge. And he said, well, first of all, it was like, well, Saul's going to give whoever, he's going to make the richest man in the world if you'll just go out there and fight the man. I won't live long enough to spend it, but that's what everybody's thinking. He'll give you his daughter for marriage. All you got to do is just go out there and fight the man. I'll never see her. I can just imagine what these Israelites are thinking. What was the third thing he was going to do for the person that went out there? Oh, your family will be tax-free for the rest of your life. You won't have to pay taxes. And that goes right back to John. Lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, and vainglory of life. The same three things. Saul is offering the three things that people were tempted with right there in that verse. Just like we talked about Goliath and Samson, the things they took from him. This is what he's offering. And nobody's saying, no, I'm not going out there to that man. No way. I'd never see that money. When David asked 3 different times, what did you say he would do? And they repeated it. And that was, I think it's in 27. Yeah, in verse 26, David spoke to the men who were standing behind him, saying, what will be done for the man who kills the Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should taunt the armies of the living God? And the people answered him in accord with his words, saying, thus it will be done for the man who kills him. It was 3 times he asked about that. David's like, I think that's not a bad deal. Especially if I think I can do it. I think God's going to help me. So yes, there was a incentive there. But David, that's when he kept asking about it, and Saul heard about this, and he said, who asked that? Send that man over here. We need to talk. And he goes to Saul's tent, and he said, I'll fight him. I can take this. God's on my side. I'll take care of this man. And that's when Saul said, well, here, take my armor. It doesn't fit real well, but you can take it. You can use it. No. All I needed is my staff and my sling. Thank God. You know, and we think about the same thing today. You know, we get in situations where, oh, that's too big a problem. I can't handle that. That's where we need to think about David. You know, too big a problem? Nah, we just cut him down to size. Literally. Figuratively. Yeah, I can take care of that with God's help. We got to do the same thing today. That's too big a problem? No, I can take care of that with God's help.
Randall, what verses is it that talks about what Saul would do?
I think 26 of 17. 25 starts in 25.
Yep, okay, I got you. All right.
Yeah. So he asked about that 3 times. It shows that David was kind of like, man, that's interesting. Yeah. It does show that David has a side to him that's still, you know, basic necessities, basic, I'm still a man, I'm still going to be a man, I need to take care of my life down the road. You know, even though I've got a problem here, I got to take care of this problem right now, God's going to help me, we're going to do this, but I still need to look after my future. And he might have been a kid, 14 or 15, he might have been a little greedy. You know, David's still a human. He showed he had problems with that down the road when he became king. So maybe he's still showing a little bit, and that may be why his brother, Eliab, how do you say his name? Eliab. Eliab? Anyway, that's what his brother kind of gets on him. What do you want to know about this for? You just come down here to see the battle. He kind of chewing him out a little bit because David's showing, I don't know, maybe a young kid. He just asked the wrong questions. But he's still God's man. Yeah. So he's heard the challenge. It grieved him. He accepted the challenge. He rose to the challenge. He took care of it. So that's about the end of the class. What else, y'all any more? Yes, sir.
He also jumped to conclusions about David, about his motives, which wasn't accurate either. He's like, you just came down here to see the battle. You know, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, well, all I did was ask a question. What are you jumping on? What did I do wrong?
But maybe his brother knew him better than we know him.
Yeah.
Maybe he's shown a little bit of that in the future, in the past, you know. So I'm not going to say either way, but you know, there was commentary that I read, and it was meat for thought. Yeah. So it makes you think about, you know, David's still a human. He's not perfect. None of us are. But God can take an imperfect person and make something happen if we're willing to work for God. Sir.
What height do you have David at?
That's about 5'8",
Okay.
give or take a little bit.
And
And then we
that's
have-
that's a tall person back then, you know, like if you look at the Mexican Mayans,
Yeah.
they're all like really short people, and Hebrew people back in those times was about 5 to 5'3" or something like that, so even that would be I would be a tall person, a tall
I was
Hebrew.
going to say that 5'8" is tall for some people, short for others.
Yeah, I would be considered a tall Hebrew.
Yeah, so we have Saul, which is head and shoulders above everybody in Israel, the second. And we just used for somebody we can see today is Shaquille O'Neal right up here, right there. And then you have Andre the Giant right there. And then you got this guy called Goliath. He's 9 foot tall. And it's like, that gives you an idea of where David, man, you got to have guts. Stand up for what's right. Anything else? We're going to close the class.
Getting back to the commentary about armor and stuff, is I read too, the fact that David was so precise at where he landed that stone, that there's a space, they said, between the helmet and that's exposed the forehead just a little bit, just enough. You know, I mean, that was a vulnerable spot.
Yeah. Well, when they
David had to
say,
be really precise to hit that spot.
well, they say the Benjamites had 700 warriors that could sling a stone at a hair and not miss, I bet David was right there with him. So,
The thing about it is,